Gather round, bad witches, learners, curious people alike. My name is Jade, and welcome to my Bad Witch Emporium. I had someone comment on my TikTok asking how to deconstruct religious trauma. And I wanted to actually use this as a great moment of how to do that, because I know there are a lot of people out there that are wondering how to do the same thing, okay? And I wanted to use my real life personal experience as an example of deconstructing religious trauma, beliefs that may hinder us in our spiritual journey. And this happens when we grow up in a very, very religious environment. A lot of the times this happens with any Abrahamic religion, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Those are just to name a very, very few. And a lot of the times when we are put in a very extreme religious environment, growing up, we kind of adapt to this ideology that is brought up around us. And these views can be very extreme, very black and white. And a lot of times it's very fear-based. And that's the kind of community I grew up in. It was a very fear-based community. Well, if you don't do this, X, Y, and Z, you're gonna go to hell. You're a terrible person, basically. You're a terrible person without Jesus and God. Okay? I obviously have worked through a lot of this indoctrination, which is what happens. Basically, it's unlearning the indoctrination of what we grew up around and broadening our perspective, spiritually speaking. It doesn't even have to be religious, right? Just opening up our perspective to new things, new ideas, and saying, what if there's more? What if there's more to this argument? Or what different perspectives are there? When we come from a place of curiosity rather than fear, it really encourages us to grow in a healthy way. Now, a real life example of this happening to me actually today. And I was kind of aware that this was happening, but I wasn't sure of how to go about deconstructing this specific idea. And we see a lot of times in the spiritual community online, there are a lot of people that police. The witch talk police they're strict. They're very strict. And a lot of us here don't go into practices that don't belong to you, your culture, your religion that you grew up in from your ancestors, right? Closed practices, don't touch the closed practices. And although I do agree with these things, you shouldn't just pick up anything and say, this is mine. I feel like there is an initiation that needs to be had in most cases. So let's say you grew up with an elder who practices, a certain practice and teaches you those ways. That's a great example of getting initiated into it. And another thing that people don't understand is when they're saying this, they're saying it from a place of, you can learn about these things. That was one thing that I felt like was stopping me from progressing in my journey, was being too scared to learn about even close practices, right? It's just, you have to be initiated in it in some way, shape, or form to actually practice it, to become, one with that practice. But there's nothing wrong with actually learning. I have a ninth house stellium. If y'all know astrology, ninth house is all about higher learning, religion, and culture, traveling. I have a stellium there, right? There's a lot of energies going on in that house for me, and it fascinates me. Cultures fascinate me, religion fascinates me, higher learning, spirituality, all these things, right? Instead of saying, okay, I'm not going to dabble in this, right? Because we shouldn't dabble where we shouldn't be dabbling. We're going to say, I want to be knowledgeable in this subject. Although I may never practice this, I may never feel a calling to practice this practice, that's okay. But I know about it. So my real life example is I'm in Thailand, right? And there is an importance emphasized in spirituality within the Thai culture. I already knew this. And that's one thing that really drew me in. There was, for a while, stopping me from exploring this. They're predominantly Buddhist, right? But there's also deities they honor, land spirits that they honor. Every place that is like built in an area, that area has a tiny home for the land spirits, an altar for the land spirits to keep them happy, right? And to keep the people that are living there in their good graces. Even I have one. And my apartment actually has one. And for a while I would pass by it and I'd be like, well, that's for, locals. But then I kind of sat there for a minute and I was like, I should be honoring these spirits too. And again, because of where I grew up, predominantly Christian, right? And also being told like, hey, don't dabble in this. And I just felt like almost as if it was overstepping, right? Because historically, white people are notorious for doing this, right? And I was like, I'm not going to be one of them. I'm not going to be one of them. I'm not going to be like my shitty ancestors, right? So I thought about it and I said this thought of, well, I'm just going to, not do that. And I'm just going to leave it be. Again, it was fear-based. Well, I just don't want to overstep this, even if it's honoring land spirits, right? And going up to the altar, saying a prayer. It's this thing of overstepping, right? It's coming from a good place, right? When I'm approaching these land spirits, the spirits of Thailand, right? River spirits, water spirits, they're especially, what I'm learning, they're especially notorious for water spirits and river spirits, right? Because there's the Mekong River and the Gulf of Thailand. But in a way, it would be ignorant for me to say, I'm not going to learn about this, or I'm just going to stay in my lane. That right there is the very reason why my ancestors probably got the rap that they did. Because when they stepped in a different land, right, they didn't adapt at all, right? It was a very domineering way. Obviously, I'm not trying to, preach the word of Hecate to everybody passing down the street, but you get the idea. Not wanting to learn about it or being scared to learn about something can cause this rift. And I am a firm believer that this is why, so many cultures are drifting apart, because there's a difference between cultural appropriation and appreciation, right? When you appreciate something, you learn about something, you come from a place of curiosity, that's when connection happens. And it's okay to connect. It's okay to have differences too. That's also very important. It's like coexisting in a beautiful way. So this morning, I woke up from an incredible dream that I had. And I dream a lot, right? I get a lot of intel from my dreams, whether it's symbolism, visitations, anything of that nature. And I had a deity come visit my dreams. And it wasn't a deity that I expected. I work with Goddess Hecate. I work with a lot of chthonic deities that are thousands of years ago, right? Even the infernals, for example. And the deity that visited me was Ganesha, which is a Hindu deity. He's one of the 5 Hindu deities from what I'm learning so far. I have a very minimal amount of knowledge on Hinduism because the way I was raised was, it's like, okay, just stay in your lane. And in the dream, right, I saw him sitting on his altar, he had a shrine, his altar. It was a pink elephant, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And he turned his head towards me, acknowledged me. There was a local man that was praying to him, right? But first he turned towards me, looked at me, and then I was like, oh my gosh, this God is looking like straight at me. Bow my head, and I'm like, thank you, I appreciate you. And I knew his name, which is also something that indicates to me that this is very important, because when a deity comes into my dreams or any spirit, right, and I know this information, it's like, this is important information to, go in the waking life. And I just thank him. And I was like, okay, this stare is very intense. And the local man prayed to him. And as he prayed to him, Ganesh actually opened his arms and just gave him a hug. He gave the man a hug. And after he gave the man a hug, the man just took off running, doing construction in the city. He was like caulking the windows and like repairing sidewalks. And he was just very energized. And I guess he was very motivated to do his work. So when I woke up, I was concerned because I never had this sort of interaction with any of the Hindu pantheon. Upon researching, right, I just go down a rabbit hole. That drive for knowledge, for curiosity, is so important in bridging this gap and deconstructing these ideas as well. So I'm like, hey, is this even a deity that is, like, what's his temperament like? What are his symbols? His lore. I'm researching, and I still am. But what I've learned from him so far is that he is not just for people who practice Hinduism, and he's actually widely acknowledged throughout the world. You don't have to be Hindu to practice honoring this deity. And what I found was that a lot of the things he represents, he's the Lord of, which is success, breaking down barriers, right? Removing obstacles, bringing good fortune and motivation. Him coming into my space and I'm researching, I see he's great for removing obstacles and, also giving motivation for his people that pray to him for success. So when this whole thing happened, I realized what I was doing is, do I have to practice Hinduism to partake in this? And the answer is no. You don't have to be a part of any religion to learn about it, truly. And staying curious is the best thing you can do. Ganesh is also the Lord of beginnings, new beginnings, and he is often honored before the start of ceremonies, rituals, start of businesses, before anything else. And I also think that's symbolic too, because again, learning the ways of the Thai people, their culture, their spirituality, this is also symbolic to me as well, that he is the beginning, because it's saying, hey, you can start here. He is, I don't think he would approach me or even just say, hey, my presence is here, if he didn't offer an extending hand. Because a lot of times we are also scared to reach out to certain spirits or deities. That's also another thing, coming from a place of fear. Now, there are some spirits that is like, you just need to leave alone, right? And it's very, very, very well known. They don't want just anybody flocking to them. However, for the most part, when a deity is in our space, a new spirit is in our space, we can approach it with curiosity and not fear, to learn about them, research them, especially, this goes for any sort of deity that you are thinking about incorporating into, your daily rituals, your prayers, routines, right? Adding to your pantheon, and you're nervous, you're scared to reach out. Research first, of course, before anything. But in that process, don't be scared that they're going to turn you down, right? Because if they're in your space or their presence is known, most likely they are very accessible, more accessible than you realized. In my case, this was, with Ganesh or Ganesha. It's both is right. So all of that to say, this is the intricacies of deconstructing our beliefs, and we constantly have to do it, right? There's always going to be a process. It's never, a one and done thing, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as we understand that it's a journey, it's a process. And even, as someone who has practiced witchcraft for as long as I have, learned about different pantheons upon the years, I still come to learn that I have something, to deconstruct. And it's okay if you have these ideas you are working through that have been driven into you since you were probably an adolescent, right? This is okay. So don't be scared. All of that to say, be curious, be open-minded, and see it as a way to grow as a person and also grow spiritually. There's nothing wrong with learning. There's nothing wrong with being curious and gathering intel, gathering knowledge. And we can use this to, again, reconstruct our subconscious into a more healthy belief system. So I hope this helps. I will keep y'all updated on my journey with this. And let me know if y'all want to hear more about this, because this is a very niche subject, honestly. So if y'all want to hear more about this, let me know. But blessed be baddies.